Even though he might not admit it, alleged political commentator Ethan Ralph is his own worst enemy. At first, Ethan Ralph had what seemed to be a promising career. He quickly jumped on a growing political bandwagon in the 2010s to rapidly become something of a notable figure in the online political commentary world. But that promising career didn't last long. While Ralph seemed to understand the basics of what he should do, what Ralph actually did all but ruined his career. To explain what I mean, we need to start at the beginning, all the way back in 2012. Back in 2012, Ralph founded the Ralph Retort, a website that was largely designed to give Ralph a platform to complain about things. His articles were, at the time, not all that in-your-face or right-wing. Case in point, a 2013 article penned by Ralph complained about, quote, revolting Republicans, and Ralph affirmatively called himself a, quote, lefty that, quote, detested George W. Bush's administration. That said, in 2014, Ralph hit on a key vein of content, Gamergate. That movement immediately catapulted him into some degree of niche internet fame. Within a year, Ralph's content went from so-called lefty commentary to rants about the SJW press. In other words, his tone quickly shifted to fit that of his new audience. From then on, Ralph became a somewhat notable figure in a very niche corner of the internet. For example, Ralph would appear on the Kill Stream, a streaming show where mostly alt-right folks yelled at things and each other. Imagine The View, but everyone is more drunk and even more useless. Despite this quick rise in popularity, Ralph's personal failings began to become more and more obvious. As just one example, 2 years after getting wide attention for his Gamergate commentary, Ralph was arrested in Loudoun County in 2016 for drunkenly assaulting a police officer. This arrest and other contemporaneous information seem to suggest that Ralph has a serious alcohol and drug abuse problem. Then came real trouble, a publicity stunt turned wrong. After plenty of drama not really worth detailing, Ralph and his associates held the Kill Stream, a publicity stunt that used YouTube Super Chats to fundraise for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. This stream went fairly well and raised about $26,000 for charity. With that said, in true Ralph fashion, the stream was beset with content that was quite controversial.
Comes to mind.
Man, having a Holocaust denier on kind of kills the buzz of a pro-cancer stream, doesn't it?
It's not pro-cancer.
This is exactly the opposite of pro-cancer.
I'm sorry, pro-helping, helpful.
Maybe it's all the time I put into Minecraft, but I would totally make a roller coaster if I wanted to get.
What you're saying there, you're using this term denier as a term as if to say, well, this is something that should never be questioned. This is, for me to even suggest that...
You're a Holocaust skeptic then, eh?
At some point later, Ralph was contacted by a certain Wall Street Journal author who allegedly intended to pen an article regarding, quote, how alt-right personalities have used YouTube's Super Chat function. What happened after that is up for debate. In response to the reach out from the Wall Street Journal, Ralph's fans might have harassed the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal might have itself pulled some strings to encourage YouTube to deplatform Ralph. YouTube itself might have already planned to deplatform Ralph, and it might have done so just because of all the misbehavior of Ralph's fans. Regardless of who you believe and what you believe, the results are pretty much universally accepted as true. Kill Stream donors were refunded, Ralph lost access to most YouTube functionality, and Ralph was forced to even more niche corners of the internet. Around the same time, Ralph was bickering with a lot of other internet personalities. I'd summarize these disputes, but it's all sorority tier nonsense that doesn't deserve your mental attention. Just imagine a bunch of rednecks slap fighting, or, in the case of a certain failed boxing match, not slap fighting, over a perceived slight. Then things got much, much worse for Ralph. His personal life began to collapse. Around 2019, Ralph allegedly cheated on his then e-wife, Nora, leading to a divorce. This was the beginning of Ralph's long trajectory to becoming a convicted sex offender. The story is straight out of a trailer park and begins with Ralph online dating a dubiously 18-year-old named Faith. At some point after this odd relationship began, Faith and Ralph had some form of a temporary breakup, and Faith temporarily went home. Not long later, Ralph allegedly leaked an intimate tape of himself and Faith to one of Faith's ex-boyfriend, in what might have been an attempt to shame Faith and scandalize the ex-boyfriend. That said, the video was mostly hilarious because of how lazy Ralph was in bed, and how arguably Faith had to fake engagement in the process. Initially, Ralph claimed that he was hacked, lashing out at his audience for calling him out on this. That said, the Commonwealth of Virginia wasn't keen on letting Ralph get away with this nonsense. Ralph was charged with revenge pornography, and Ralph ultimately pled nolo contendere to the charge. This nolo plea was essentially Ralph accepting conviction without admitting guilt, allowing him to pretend as if he did nothing wrong, while technically still being convicted and given a 12-month suspended sentence. This isn't even getting into one of my favorite videos in the world, a video of Ethan Ralph waddling up to someone's house and fighting over personal property.
Guns galore flailing in the night breeze as the 35-year-old gray-haired alcoholic starts pulling out the 22-year-old home defender's hair like a little girl in a school fight.
Again, Jerry Springer stuff. Things have only gotten worse for Ralph in the last few weeks. Fresh off his NOLO plea to revenge pornography, Ralph went to Portugal allegedly to one-up his haters and pretend as if he had money. Funny enough, both Ralph and I were in Lisbon at the exact same time. I should note that Ralph and I took nearly the exact same flights from nearly the exact same airport, stayed in roughly the same part of Lisbon, and the like. Based on my own experience and expenditures, I can assure you that it was a stupidly cheap trip. The trip was not the financial flex Ralph wanted it to be. Now, I had an amazing time, ate great food, met amazing people, and generally enjoyed myself thoroughly. In contrast, Ralph got the snot beat out of himself, got his man purse stolen, had emergency surgery in an old Portuguese hospital, and then quickly tried to heal his ego by pretending to have a good time on a boat. I secretly suspect this parade of horribles happened because Ralph drunkenly mouthed off to the wrong people, or tried to buy something he shouldn't have. But I have no proof, and Ralph's been coy about details. Note that this entire trip was late in Faith's pregnancy, meaning that Ralph abandoned his very pregnant girlfriend to get the tar beat out of him in the streets of Lisbon. Nowadays, Ralph is pretty much at war with anyone and everyone. Recently, Ralph ineffectively debated Mr. Medicare, jettisoned his former loyal friend Gator, and apparently is hanging on to Dick Masterson like a needy child hangs on to their mother. It seems that Ralph's life has gone pretty low. He might not be at the bottom, but he's rapidly accelerating there. Now, based on my review of endless hours of Ralph's content, I'm genuinely of the opinion that Ralph is his own worst enemy. On one hand, Ralph seems to understand the very basics of what he needs to do to be successful. Whether or not you agree with him, Ralph was able to identify a target market, that is, folks interested in Gamergate, develop content targeting that market, and exploit it to decent success. Ralph also understood the value of digging in. That is, not apologizing for being himself, no matter how extreme he was. Ralph's haters might spend countless hours hating him, but Ralph constantly acts as if every day is a 5-star day, which in my mind is a pretty good strategy. On the other hand, Ralph is his own worst enemy, constantly kneecapping his own attempts at success. Even if you agree with Ralph's free speech absolutism, he seems unable or unwilling to craft content that's generally accessible to the public. Even if he was making good content, he's doing everything in his power to prevent it from being easily accessible. Moreover, virtually every decision Ralph makes starts off as good, but is stymied by his own stupid actions. He tries to help clean up the killstream's image with the heel stream, but it quickly devolves into childish behavior that results in him losing a battle with the Wall Street Journal on YouTube. He finds a surprisingly nice wife, but then allegedly cheats on her. His attempts at looking tough and getting into a fight devolve into jokes about him being unable to throw a single well-formed punch. He finds an uncomfortably young girl willing to tolerate his nonsense, but then attacks her ex-boyfriend, spreads revenge pornography, and blames it on hacking. He then tries to go to Portugal to create content and seem important, but somehow manages to get his face caved in and his man purse stolen. He develops fairly valuable connections on the internet, but then begins to lash out randomly, and his remaining friends seem embarrassed by him. So what can we learn from Ethan Ralph? What can you learn from a bowling ball shaped blowhard that constantly acts as his own enemy? I think there are 3 lessons here. First, don't be like Ralph and constantly kneecap your own effort. When you make a decision, stick to it, but recognize that execution is everything. For example, Ralph could have turned his Portugal trip into an amazing success and interesting content, but instead seemingly drunkenly ruined it and made himself a laughingstock. Second, consider being a little bit like Ralph and occasionally stick to your guns. Even if he is a huge mess, Ralph's a little bit admirable in that he doesn't waffle about apologizing for perceived slights and trying to appease everyone. In other words, Ralph doesn't concede that when others are offended, he did something wrong. After all, it might be their fault for you being delicate and easily offended. I think it's a good thing sometimes to dig in. Using this tactic selectively can be useful. And third, don't carry a man purse and get into fights. Thank you as always for watching this video. As always, I would appreciate your thoughts in the comments, and let me know if you're having an Ethan Ralph style 5-star day.